Hello everyone, this is a new style of video I am doing. It will be called Heart to Hearts. They're going to be a form of my vlogs, and I will just do them whenever I feel inspired to respond to any sort of articles, or mostly articles. So I love reading articles, and the one that's going to start this all out, I think, is perfect to start this. I knew in my heart that I wanted to start this style of vlog series, but I didn't know what article I wanted to start it with, and this is just absolutely the most perfect one we could start with. So it is a response to the blog post that Cardinal Cupich posted on Wednesday, February 15th, 2023, entitled "A Church Called to Love Perfectly." I thought that this needed some serious response, and it seemed to be asking for a response, specifically for a response from a traditionalist Catholic point of view, perspective. So I wanted to be that perspective for you all, so that we might understand things a little bit more clearly, because when we're dealing with the topic of love, it can obviously get very complex and difficult to maybe navigate as individuals. It's not meant to be understood individually. So this is why we have this heart to heart. So from my heart to the heart of Your Eminence, Blase Cardinal Cupich, I would like to read this, and as I read, I will respond. So it goes like this. It says, among the many points of convergence, that means similarities, between the late Pope... Sorry about that. I have 4 little children. I should introduce myself. I am a traditional Roman Catholic. I have 4 children, and I was raised in the neo-catechumenal way, and then I converted to traditional Catholicism in college. I went to Wyoming Catholic College, and I studied the great books. I studied Aquinas. I studied, Aristotle and things like that, and all this cold, hard logic that you refer to in this post. So I thought it would be fitting to respond. But yes, I became a traditional Catholic around the time I was in college, and I have been living the traditional Catholic faith now for at least 12 years. And I married my husband. I was born and raised traditional Catholic. His family also born and raised traditional Catholic. His parents, his grandparents, never stopped attending the traditional Latin Mass after the changes of Vatican II. Okay, this is how traditional my family is. So this is how traditional my perspective is. They rejected the changes after Vatican II. They had a strong devotion to the Sacred Heart. They refused the changes of Vatican II. They found an independent priest, Father Carly, you can look him up in Akron, and that was their parish priest for the majority of their life. They also have attended SSPX parishes and anywhere that will offer the traditional Latin Mass. Right now we attend a diocesan traditional Latin Mass. However, since Traditionis Custodes, they have refused to give us the sacraments of initiation for our children, so we will be getting those where they are available, just so you know. So that is how traditional we are. That is my viewpoint. That's where I'm coming from, because you're speaking here of perspectives. You're speaking here of Pope Benedict's perspective and Pope Francis' perspective. They both have different perspectives, and they both insist that this love is totally unconditional, mysterious, transformative, and gratuitous. I think we can all agree on that. That doesn't seem to be something that anyone would disagree with. The different perspectives, I would just like to point that out, because when we're dealing with love and we're dealing with objective reality, a lot of people forget that we're dealing with our subjective understanding of objective reality. So then we're getting a little more metaphysical here. We're getting a little more meta, right? So there's what you'll hear it a lot in the liberal world, where they say your truth or my truth. And there's some truth to that, okay? There's some truth. It's not total. It's not totally your truth. But there is a lot of truth to your personal perspective having a huge influence on the objective reality, the external objective cold hard facts of reality. Okay, so there is some truth to that. It is a mystery, okay? And it is not something that we can touch with our minds or with our hearts. It's not something we're allowed to touch. Okay, Sorry, there will be interruptions throughout this. I can't help it. This is the nature of my call to love. Okay, anyway. What was I saying? Okay, it's mysterious. It's not something that we can touch with our minds or even with our hearts. Even with our heart working with our mind, if you would put it that way. Something I have learned as a mother and as an avid truth seeker and a lover of science is that our heart has certain, what do they call it? Neurons. Receptors for neurons in our heart. So there is a connection and a relationship, communication between the heart and the brain, obviously. The heart and the mind speak to one another in their own way. All right, and that's going to be a mystery that's not for us to really touch. We can wrestle with it. We are able to wrestle with it as Israel wrestled with God, right? And then his hip was hit, right? He was injured from it. But he said, do not go until you have blessed me. He won that battle and he knew it. And he required the blessing that comes with that. So there are instances in which God allows us to wrestle with this mystery without us being too injured. Maybe a bump on the hip or something. Now, as Christians, he has given us even more wiggle room when it comes to wrestling with this mystery without being hurt, okay? Without us touching the Ark of the Covenant without dying immediately, okay? We can do that. We can sort of enter spaces that are not for us, okay? That is a grace that he has given to us, his chosen people, who have his sacraments and are marked with his signs. And these signs are his language, the language of the church, which is more than Latin. The language of the church, as you see, postmodernism, is as much in its signs, images, as it is in its words. And that's why after modernism, there was such iconoclasm. There was a huge stripping of all the signs in the church that you could imagine. And this is trying to deaden our imagination, trying to weaken our imaginations. Why? Because it's where this mysterious, transformative, and gratuitous, unconditional power plays out. Okay? It plays out in the imagination before it plays out in reality, in a sense. Okay? We can have these conversations about God in the public sphere, but only under certain very limited rules. If you would like to speak to me personally about my experience of trying to speak with God's authority in public as a woman, please give me a call and we'll have that conversation. But I know from my personal experience of wrestling with this mystery, I know of my truth, my subjective perspective of this objective reality, okay? I know for a fact, a cold, hard fact is what you think they're cold and hard. My facts are not cold and hard. I make very living facts in myself, in my soul. I am able to conceive of living facts that maybe a man is not able to conceive of. I don't know. And this is something I think is maybe a difference between men and women. I don't want to go that far, okay? Because I don't want to touch this mystery, all right? I don't want to go beyond the bounds. But I have my suspicions, and I'm sharing those with you. Because it sounds to me, when I read this, that this is the man's struggle. Maybe this is the bishop's and the head of household, the masculine struggle, right? Struggle with love, wrestling with love. It seems cold, hard. It seems to, how do you put it at the end? It says, the love is so great, God turns against himself, his love against his justice. Sounding profound, dangerous as hell. Okay, I'm just going to stop you here. I think this is maybe the masculine limit. Like if you've hit that point, you've reached the limit of love, stop, don't go further. Okay, that's the limit. Don't go past that, is what I would say. Unless you want to die like Jesus Christ on the cross. And maybe you do. okay? But we need to unpack that and what that means in the spiritual realm. Because if you're going that far for yourself, for your family, that's one thing. If your love is so great that now it's turning upon your wife, your bride, your church, that's not love, okay? That's abuse. And I would even go so far as to say that turning your love against yourself as a man is also not love, okay? It's also abuse, okay? So I'm saying, if that's where the love that you feel in your heart is true love, is leading you, call that into question for sure, because I don't think that's from God. All right, now I'm going to try to explain this, because you bring up eros and agape, but you leave out esse, right? You leave out esse. Why don't you talk about esse? Why aren't you meditating upon esse? Because in my world as a mother, eros, agape, for sure, total love. But my love for my children is not eros, and my love for my household, my domesticated love, is not eros. It is esse, and it is also bestowed in a completely gratuitous manner without any previous merit. Okay, so it's also that agape love, but it's not eros. It's not love of desire. It's love of already having the good, already possessing the good. And what is that good? Obviously God, primarily. Obviously God. All right, so I got to put this out there. So I think that you need to meditate a little bit more on esse to start with, and maybe try to experiment with esse and how do you love as this domesticated version of love, this unwild, tame mystery of God's grace. Because there's a reason that the church is a woman and not a man. And there's a reason that the church has these signs and these symbols and things like excommunication, things like exorcism, all of the signs and the symbols. There's a reason they exist, and it's not a material reason. It's not a psychological reason. It's a spiritual reason, because the spiritual world is real. The devil is a real person. And the minute you forget that on the spiritual journey of love is the minute you let him in, and then all hell breaks loose. Okay? So you have to remember this. And you're not going to be able to just remember this on your own. Okay? I'm here to remind you and wake you up, perhaps. But God puts in place in your specific life, in your subjective perspective of objective reality, your perspective, he is placing in your life cues and signs and people to alert you to this mystery and to participate in this mystery with you. You're not alone participating in this mystery. Okay, so I get that where this eros, I want to touch on, not eros, but yeah, there is something about the love of desire which it needs to come to an end, right? Like desire cannot go on eternally. Desire must come to at rest and be at rest with God, with esse, with existence itself. Okay, because otherwise it will never be fulfilled, and it'll never be happy. It'll never have true love. So if your love of desire is truly pointed towards the good, and it feels like, or you sincerely, let's say from your subjective perspective, you are sincerely desiring the good, and it feels like in your heart to you that you are now attacking yourself or attacking the church or hurting the beloved, okay? Not giving the child what's good for him, right? Like the father doesn't give his son a snake when he asks for an egg, okay? So if you're reaching that point, you need to go back, recalibrate your trajectory for your desire from your perspective. So one thing I really wanted to touch on was this notion of cold hard Gnostic logic. It comes up a lot. It does bother me too. Specifically Ben Shapiro style, the facts don't care about your feelings style of verbal warfare. Let's put it that way. In a sense, it's true. But in another sense, feelings themselves are facts. And how do you wrap your mind around that? Because not all facts are cold and hard and lifeless. There are a million facts walking around, talking, speaking, full of life. Not cold, not hard, not lifeless, you know? And these facts are true. You and me, our hearts, our spiritual reality is real. It is a fact, and it is not cold or hard or gnostic, okay? It's not a spiritual thing. I mean, it is spiritual, but it's embodied, right? You can see it. You can see the spirit in real life. And, yeah, so I just wanted I wanted to kind of poke a couple holes in these principles you lay out in the beginning, because I think there's some problem with these principles. You say, when somebody has an answer for every question, it is a sign that they are not on the right road. That might be your personal perspective of that situation, because it seems as though most people are BSing their way through life. Like, if they seem to have confidence, eventually it's got to give, right? Eventually something is going to knock their feet out from under them, right? But that might be a good rule of thumb, but it is not a principle from which to logically deduce anything related to love. Okay, so that might be a working rule of thumb, but it's not a logical principle. I just want to point that out. For God is full of surprises. That's very interesting that this Pope is very, very confident in God being full of surprises. And I don't quite understand what that means. I assume it has something to do with mystery and wonder. Surprise. I know when I get surprised, I faint. All right? If that helps you understand the problem with surprises, they might be too shocking or alarming for delicate hearts to handle. All right? It doesn't even take much for me. All right? My husband has to announce himself before he walks in the house, because I swear he's so quiet. And then he just, it doesn't mean to be, but he'll just be right next to me, and it scares the living daylights out of me. He just hasn't done anything, hasn't said anything. His very presence right next to me when I wasn't expecting it makes me faint. Okay? That is how alarming this God of surprises is. Now, I don't know if that is what it triggered in me, this notion. Of this God of surprises. Like, what do you mean by surprises? I'd love to hear your response. What exactly are you talking about when you're saying God is full of surprises? Because the devil is also full of surprises. Like, what are we talking about here? What surprises? Yeah, I need some concrete examples of what you mean by surprises. Okay, and here's the other part. This is the clincher, I really think. We are not the ones to determine, this is that control, what you're talking about. We don't control when and how we will encounter God. Don't we? If I want to, I can encounter him right this very minute in my heart. I have complete control over that. In another sense, if I want to, I can walk myself to the nearest church and be present with him in the Eucharist, in the Holy Tabernacle. And I know for sure I'll be there with him. So we do determine when and how we will encounter him. In fact, I can determine the exact times and places of that encounter. Right now. I want to encounter God every morning at 8 a.m. when I pray. I am determining when I will meet him. And he will be there to meet me. He's not going to hold off and be like, oh, sorry, busy. He will be there. He will be there in my heart to be with me. Consciously. And when I'm not with him consciously, I know he's with me subconsciously the whole time. I have no doubt. And the more I do this sort of thing, the less doubt I have. Okay. Where are we? Okay, someone who wants everything to be clear and sure presumes to control God's transcendence. This is not true. And this is, you say, Gaudete and Exultate. Someone who wants everything to be clear and sure. All right, what did I have to say about this? Clear and sureness does not mean control over God, but it's a confidence that arises from your knowledge of God. Okay, you can be blind and still be confident. You can walk in the darkness of life, not hearing, not understanding, not seeing him, not feeling him, And you can know that he's there with all certainty. With all certainty. So you can have confidence, which is that clear and sureness, that confidence. And it's not a control over God. If anything, it's a control over yourself. So once again, if you feel like that is a control over God, that might be because you have placed yourself as God in your paradigm of understanding this dynamic. It's just a suggestion. Take it for what it is. It's just a suggestion. Okay. This all comes to a head because it's referring to what do we do about people coming to Holy Communion. How dare we withhold the Eucharist from sinners? No. Right there. Right there's the problem. We are not excluding them from life. We are protecting them from death. Because we know that if you receive the sacramental body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ in a state of unworthiness, then you will surely perish. You have touched the holy ark of the covenant, and it doesn't matter for what good of intentions it was, you will perish. I am sorry. This is the reality. Okay? This is the rule. You don't like it. It's not getting changed. God wrote it. We obey it. Period. End of story. End of story. We are not excluding them from life. We are protecting them from death. Because, like I said, God is, like you've said too, God is already with them, present in their heart. Why aren't they listening to him? Why don't they hear him? Why aren't they obeying him? Why aren't they submitting their wills to him? Why? Not because they can't. You think it's because they're unable? God gives them the grace to be able, freely, to be able to do this. They have all the grace they need to listen to him. They have all the grace they need to come to him. Nothing is holding them back that God has imposed upon them out of his cruelty. And if you feel like that's the case, then you have a mixed, imperfect view of who God is. And you do not think God is truly good. So rethink about that. So God speaks and tells us what he chooses. And this relies upon certain known certainties, defined dogmas. This is a big one. These defined dogmas have been hard-won battles in the life of the church, in the spiritual life. They exist to help us to see in the darkness of this world and to understand God's voice when he speaks to us. You have to have certain anchors in your imagination, in your mind, in your heart. You have to place certainty and anchors in this ocean so that your boat doesn't go adrift. When you're out there in the unknown, when you're out there in the wild, in this wilderness that you just somehow want to bring into the church, this disdain for the domesticating the mystery of the grace of God is God's grace is domestic by nature. God prefers it that way. God made his heart to be formed in families, in the home. He made hearts of children to be formed by hearts of mothers. He did not make things to be children to be raised by wolves, okay? This isn't Romulus and Remus here, who by a miracle of nature were raised by wolves or something. God's love is domestic. It is submissive. It is gentle. It is caring. It is orderly. And that does not make it boring or unexciting or not surprising. Okay, we can have surprises, plenty of surprises. I see plenty of surprises in my little domestic sphere. Okay, I don't need the whole wilderness brought into my home. Okay, so the church has spent millennia at this point cleaning up the world for Our Lady so that she can walk in it in peace, so that it is safe for Our Lady to dwell, because it's truly her home. It belongs to her. She earned it. She won it. This is her home. not yours, not ours. If it is ours, it's only by her granting it to us out of the love in her heart. It's not ours by right. It's hers by right. She earned it at the foot of that cross. She earned it at her fiat. She earned it at her conception. Because it was God who made her worthy. The earning was not from eros. It was not from some desire that she achieved. The earning was from her acceptance of esse from the moment of her conception. Okay? So, let's have a little bit more respect for domesticating the mystery of God's grace, making room for Our Lady in this world, treating what is holy and sacred properly in the church, especially the Holy Eucharist. Obviously, because it is truly Jesus Christ, body, blood, soul, and divinity. And the church already has a means of bringing those more perfectly into the bosom of the church, deeply into her heart. There are many layers, there are many levels. You don't just get to go straight to the center. There's no, perhaps, let's say, for most of us, in general, there's no cheating your way into Our Lady's heart, okay? There might be some quick cheats you do to understand things in this world and to get ahead in your understanding of anything, your understanding of love, for instance, here. We're sort of cheating because I'm sharing my notes with you, sharing my experience with you to help you move a little further along from where you are at. But that's not really cheating. That's the way God intended love to be used and shared. Okay. So, essay, yes, we got to focus on essay. Okay. So we cannot forget that not everyone is perfect right now. This is not heaven. Okay, otherwise, yeah, everyone could just receive the Eucharist right now. We are in progress. We are in time. Okay, we have to practice at being good. And when we are practicing, it's going to look a lot like we're pretty bad. We're going to fail a lot. We're going to not be good at it. And getting back up and trying again. What do they say? They say a thing is worth doing. A thing that's worth doing is worth doing badly first. Right? That's how that saying goes. So God's presence in people of ill will is patiently suffering. So God is esse, resting inside of people who are of ill will towards him. That God is patiently suffering. He is in agony. He is in pain. That God. Okay? God in that subjective person's perspective, right? We're talking about God in people. So if he is in a person of ill will, which he truly is, he is waiting there for them to accept him, and he is suffering excruciating agonies and torments for their sake because he loves them. And this is how he waits for them. And he will never coerce them. He will never force them. He will never overpower them. He will never twist their arm. He will never cheat them. They have to do it of their own free will. The free will which he gives them the grace to have in the first place. Which is, yes, a mystery that we cannot comprehend. All right. Waiting for them to give their hearts to him and to care so that he can care for them. He doesn't snatch their hearts from them, coerce them, or threaten them. He merely waits patiently, suffering deeply, okay? So that suffering is not good in itself, okay? It's good for what it accomplishes, but it is not good in itself, okay? There's no reason to sit in suffering if that's not where God is calling you to be. So we've talked about esse. God is not opposed to himself. I have to go. Okay. Did I talk about ego sum qui sum? Ego sum qui sum. Did we talk about this? No. We talked about esse. Okay, in the Bible, when God reveals himself to Moses in the burning bush, right? He says, in Latin, he says, ego sum qui sum. Now, from that, we have translated esse. God saying, I am existence itself. That's a nice intellectual idea. But if you read the Latin, it says ego sum qui sum, and that is a person saying, I am that which I am. That's the literal translation. I am that which I am. I am is what he's saying. Okay? He's not saying I am existence itself and let's have a philosophical discussion about the intellectual realm of, I don't know, the world. He's saying I am who I am. Like from a person to a person. You're asking someone you love, who are you? Who are you? And they have no other answer but I am who I am. This is who I am. That's it. Okay? It's much more profound. So God is not opposed to himself. He's not opposed to his beloved. He is not turning against himself. His love does not turn against his justice. No, no, no. If it appears like that to you, it's because of a failure in your perspective, your subjective perspective of the objective reality, your subjective understanding of certain things that you've made associations of, because love starts dealing in realms of association. It's not just verbal language now. We're dealing with imagery, okay? We're dealing with, you call it gnostic logic, and this is that mystical knowledge, which is, heavily a part of religion itself, our religion, any religion, not modernist religion. They don't have a lot of this because they have small imaginations. Thank God. So anyway, okay, you do say, unfortunately, some in the church struggle to understand the insights of these magisterial teachings. There are voices that insist the church must exclude sinners from fuller participation in the life of the church until they have reformed out of respect for God, not God's justice, God, the person who they are eating and bringing into their hearts. Out of respect for that person. He is not an idea of justice. He's not an idea of goodness. He is a person, a real person. And out of respect for him, we do not take his personhood in the sacramental form and put it in our physical bodies, because that's the sacramental form is his physical form in the world, and put it into our physical form, right? If our physical form and our spiritual form are not worthy of it. Otherwise we will die. Dangerous for us. So dangerous. We cannot be in a state of mortal sin. There is a huge reason for this. And if you want to talk further about this, I'm more than willing to take this offline. We can have a conversation. But I don't feel comfortable sharing everything I know online. So that's where I'm going to leave that for today. And this is my daughter, Madeline. You want to say hi, Maddie?
Hi.
Girls, you want to come say hi? This is my son, David.
Hi.
This is Margaret. You want to come say hi, Josephine?
My baby Margaret.
And baby Margaret. Oh. You can, yeah, right there's good.
Hi.
And my oldest, Josephine. These are my 4 beautiful children. And thank you for listening. Her nose. Thank you for listening today, and I hope you enjoy future heart-to-hearts like this.
I'm 6.
She just turned 6. You just have your birthday party?
Yeah.
A tea party, huh, with our friends. You can go check out that vlog where we have that tea party. Madeline is 4. Margaret is 2. David is newborn, right? How old are you, David? 3 months? So, just wanted to share. I figure for kids, that's about a doctorate in motherhood. So I think that should be given some weight in understanding love from a woman's perspective, a mother's perspective, especially a traditional Catholic perspective. I feel like my perspective is really worthwhile. And if you feel the same, please don't hesitate to give me a call. Anyway, thank you, and I would appreciate your blessing.